There's a lot more people walking around than the last time I was here. Gonna have to be extremely cautious now. Now, where could he be? Frozen? Oh, there you are. What are you doing here? And why are you sneaking around? Well, I wanted to make sure I didn't get caught by anyone. Don't want those YouTube drones catching me, especially after what happened last time. Oh right, it has been a while since we've last seen each other. You actually don't have to worry about that anymore. What? Really? Yeah, a lot has happened while you were gone. We can talk about things over some food though. Well, I am kinda hungry right now. So, where are we headed? Back to my place. So, is it cool for everyone to be seeing two of the same person next to each other? Well, I've actually told a lot of people about you, but again, all of that can wait until we're back at my place. I do feel like there's something important happening today, though. Like, today's special. I don't really know why. I've kinda got the same feeling. Aside from you showing up, that is. Oh, right! It's been a year since I started doing reviews on YouTube. Has that much time passed already? Yeah. Crazy how time flies. Don't really regret it, though. Over the Hedge, a Dreamworks movie about a group of animals trying to live their everyday lives before getting involved with a raccoon who's trying to make up his food debt with a bear that will eat him otherwise, and antics that revolve around stealing food from the neighboring humans. I think, like it or not, everyone remembers Over the Hedge. Whether you loved watching the movie in your childhood or you only heard about it from friends, everyone remembers this movie probably due to its humor and being a very easy to digest and enjoy film. Some of what I just said might sound a little familiar to some of you watching this, and probably not for a lot of you. That's because some of that was how I began my very first review as part of this review series, which was 1 year ago today, and the biggest change for my content. I've grown a lot since then, and I wanted to do something special for this occasion. So I decided to do a review for another Over the Hedge game. Now, there's not really a lot to go off of when explaining this game, other than it pretty much existed to try and ride along the success of the film. That and the game, which people seem to enjoy quite a lot. I never had much of a connection with this game before this review, so it'll be interesting going from one of my favorite license-based games of all time to reviewing another game from the same franchise. But without further delay, I'll be looking at Over the Hedge Hammy Goes Nuts to celebrate 1 whole year since I first started this review series. Hammy is sitting around watching TV when something goes wrong with it. He and RJ discover that the humans they were leeching the TV connections off of has changed from cable to satellite, or from ground to the sky as they put it. Regardless, due to this change, there's no TV anymore for them. So what better way to get it back than by knocking out the satellite dish? Except that comes with a bunch of waiting on the humans to do, such as waiting for repairs, paying bills, making connections for the cables, etc, etc. You know, typical human stuff. Luckily enough, they end up freeing a beaver named Boris during their mission. Boris then convinces RJ, Hammy, and a tail-tingling Vern to get various objects for him, and in exchange, they will get a bunch of food. They just have to get common things like a hairdryer, duct tape, a galactic TV remote, an electric generator. You know, ordinary things that 100% have a connection to each other. At some point, one of the houses that they got into mysteriously floods out of nowhere. Even the street is like this too. The gang finds out that Boris took everything that they got for him and made a beaver dam, which is now causing the city and the forest to flood. Obviously, they can't let this go on, as otherwise they would probably die. After beating Boris, he leaves with all of his stuff to another city to try and make another dam. However, as a token of appreciation, he does leave behind the satellite dish that RJ and Hammy knocked over earlier, so that Hammy is finally able to watch his television shows. For clarification, this game takes place after the movie, similar to before, and honestly it's pretty boring. I mean, Boris somewhat portraying the gang is almost entirely obvious, and he's also not in any other media. He's not mentioned in the movies or even in the comic strips either. He's just a pretty boring villain, honestly. Having other characters to somewhat make up for that would be nice, but most characters you know from Over the Hedge don't have any screen time. Now, being after the movie means that Gladys the Verminator and Vincent being exempt is fine. They have their own reasons given the events at the end of the movie. But characters like Ozzy, Heather, Lou, Penny, and their kids not being seen much in this game is surprising to say the least. Maybe I was expecting a bit more than I should have, but overall the story's just disappointing. By the way, for whatever odd or strange reason, the Wikipedia page says that Hammy is trying to destroy the Russian Federation and the United States as a whole. So, to whoever did that, if you're somehow watching this, you're a cool guy. There are somewhat reused assets between this game and the last one. Animations, some sound clips for voice actors, and even a good amount of music from the last game is reused. I'm pretty sure character models are even reused in some way too. Most stuff really looks worse due to this game being on PSP and needing some kind of downgrade. Also, most of the cutscenes for this game end up looking somewhat like a comic strip, or at least that's what I'm assuming the style is going for. If it is, then that's pretty cool, since Over the Hedge is originally a bunch of comic strips, but if it's not, well, you did something. But overall, it's alright. Now, some of you are probably expecting this game to have been made by the same company since so much stuff is similar. Well, you'd be right. And wrong. They were both published by Activision, but both games and their majorly different versions are developed by different companies. Even after doing some research, I haven't found a single connection between the three companies during this time, aside from their games being published by Activision. So unless I assume that is the reason for similar assets, I have no idea why some things are reused. I mean, the games aren't even connected story-wise, so it's just weird. I would like to mention though, for voice actors, there's a good amount of famous people like Quentin Flynn, John Kaiser, Stephen Stannon, Jim Ward, and Carla... Hey, we haven't talked about you in a while! I was starting to think I'd never talk about you again, but that's probably not going to be the case. You're like everywhere for some reason. The cast though is pretty small, or at least from what the end credits gave me, but it's actually really good. But anyways, going back to the music, while a lot of it was reused, there are some new tracks as well, and they are pretty good, just like the other tracks. They still have that wacky aspect from last time, but also gives me more of a heist feeling than before, which is odd given that the last game actually had heist while this one technically doesn't. The only aspect that seems to be completely original is the writing. The writing in this game feels just about as good as the previous game and the movie, so at the very least, characterization of the already established characters isn't an issue here.
But the human is sitting right there. Let sleeping bears lie, RJ.
Oh, burn. That hurt me. Right here, in my stomach.
I'm very happy about that because that's one of the appealing qualities to Over the Hedge, so if that was just gone, it'd be a very bad thing. Throughout the game, you play as RJ, Vern, and Hammy in order to break into houses and tunnel through sewers by pressing buttons, pulling switches, avoiding traps, and beating enemies. All of this needs to be done so that you can collect a specific item that Boris wants you to get. While all three of these characters have a few similarities, like a melee attack, climbing ladders, and collecting small food for health, each of them have their own mechanics. RJ, when looking through his first-person view, is able to throw a boomerang that allows him to hit buttons that are far away, or use a fishing rod that can send him towards any fish that's posted up, so long as nothing is in between him and said fish. Hammy can pick up energy drinks which slows down time and puts you in Hammy time. For a short period of time, everything around you moves much slower, and you are able to walk on water, or rather hop across water. Vern is the only character that can't climb graded walls or cloths since he doesn't have the cloths to do so. To make up for that though, he's the only one that can break down cracked walls by launching himself towards them. Almost every level has at least one segment where you have a limited amount of time to search around an area, pick up large amounts of food, and toss them towards someone to collect them. There are also a lot of secret items to find. All levels have an additional special item that you can collect as part of RJ's notebook. 20 points worth of acorns are scattered around each level, which can get you bonus rewards like production images, music, PSP themes, and more anytime a certain amount is collected. Silver acorns are worth 1 point, and golden acorns are worth 5. There's also multiplayer modes that you can do with up to 4 people, but I obviously can't play that with anyone, so yeah, that's fun. I actually can't even find footage of it anywhere either, so yeah, there's just not gonna be footage of that. The large sense of scale and design given to indoor areas is pretty interesting to see, and in my opinion is more well implemented than the first game. It gives off the vibe of being a small creature in a much larger environment, which the movie this is based off of does try to accomplish a good amount of the time. They do it for houses, yards, and even a supermarket pretty nicely. Though I wish there were more outdoor type levels and areas, since that is something the game lacked a bit of. There are a few areas that are people's yards with lasers and a few enemies, but nothing beyond that. Something that does work well with the large scale is whenever you have to gather food that's in the area. These make you explore around and test to see if you can figure out how to get to some spots so that you can collect every food item around you in time. And in case you don't do it in time, you can always just reset it before the time runs out like I did. Each area for these is also vastly different from each other, having different obstacles in your way, which keeps them from feeling the exact same every time. Might I also add that being able to carry up to 6 pieces of food is a very welcome change. These segments to me got pretty grand improvements over the last game, which had much smaller areas and you could only carry one object at a time. Alongside these segments, there's a little bit of extra stuff to look for, like the acorns and the secret objects that give you additional replay value to single player. It's only a little bit, but anything's better than nothing. Plus being able to get music that's from the game by going out of your way to do all this extra stuff, and you can download it onto your PSP, is actually kinda cool. The combat got a major downgrade, making it way less enjoyable. It's understandable going from a beat 'em up focused game to a platformer focused game, but it's still very sluggish. It's also more boring as there's only 1 or 2 attack methods at most for each character, with half of those being bad, and there's not that many enemy types to make things special. The only time I was slightly impressed was when you had to use Hammy time to keep up with white rats, or get behind hamsters to free them. Other than that, there weren't a lot of enemy types that made things interesting like before. Every other enemy, for how little other ones there were basically the exact same. Enemies don't take much to be defeated either, and you only potentially have a chance of getting health for defeating enemies, which you can find just about anywhere else in the game. So you might as well just run past them whenever the game isn't forcing you to defeat them. And yes, the last game had this issue too, but at least then you could potentially get a weapon drop, a gun, or some health. And here it is more excusable given that, again, this game is more platformer based, but fighting enemies feels far less appealing and even less worthwhile than it was before. Also, the camera is horrible in this game. I have a feeling that is more due to the fact that there are more condensed areas and you are able to control the camera a good amount of the time compared to before, but any small or tight areas make me fight with the camera way more often than enemies, which kinda sucks considering a decent amount of this game is like that. Segments where the camera needs to be set in a certain direction will jerk the camera to its position, which can cause some screw-ups when I'm trying to move properly, especially if I'm on a time limit. There being no playable Stella is a little odd. Maybe it's just my nostalgia with the first game, but I do group her with the other 3, and not having her as a playable character outside of multiplayer just feels weird. To be fair, I don't see her having much of a gameplay mechanic other than using gas to keep certain enemies away, which for this game doesn't really have much of a purpose, so her not being playable is fine. Again, this is just my nostalgia talking. Also, I've heard that the multiplayer is good from looking at other reviews for this game, but without any footage to even look at it, I can't really verify that. It's just a moot point. That's just how the cookie crumbles, guys. Well, this didn't turn out as well as I thought it would. Platforming is pretty standard, though it is better than before, and single player as a whole isn't the most fulfilling thing, since getting through it with a crummy camera and boring combat makes this game more of a chore to get through, which is this game's biggest downfall. Now, a little bit of this might be some bias due to the prior game, which as I said earlier is one of my favorite license-based games, and I probably expected more, I will admit that, but it's relatively average for any platformer. If you're a fan of Over the Hedge, you'll probably find a little bit of enjoyment out of it, but for anyone who isn't, it is a hard pass. Which again is a big shame considering how much of a fan I am of the original game. But it's like I said at the end of my first review, not every game is a diamond, and not all of them are poop. Sometimes you just find that little something that's just nice to look at. This game unfortunately is not that. To be honest, it's crazy that it's been a year since the review started. And what, a couple months since I first met you? Yeah. A lot has changed. A lot has changed. Well, we can do some reminiscing inside. Yeah, If only that were the reason I was here. What's going on, my fellow residents? It's me, TheFrozenCavern, and thank you guys for making it to the end of this video. First off, I want to say thank you guys very much for all the support that you guys have given me throughout the last year, because due to this review series, my views for videos have gone way better than the content that I uploaded before. I've gotten my 1,000 subscriber milestone because of this, and I've even almost gotten up to 1,000 subscribers in a year just from this content alone. Like, I'm only about 250 off at the time of this upload, which is absolutely crazy. And not only that, I'm surprised that the lore stuff that I added for this review has gotten relatively well received after all this time. Like, honestly, I'm kind of wondering if anyone is actually like wondering what I'm gonna do next for any of the lore stuff that I do. I don't know if they actually like anticipate that. If you do, then that's really cool. Like, let me know in the comments below if you actually do. So again, thank you guys for all of the support that you guys have been giving me for the past year, and I promise to not disappoint with future videos. Now, as per usual, as I've done for about a year now, if you have not already, make sure you guys go down into the description below, as that's where all of my social medias are located. My Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Discord are all in the description, and they are all ways of being able to know when my next video is going to be up, as well as updates for the channel. But, until next video, take care.